The cross and crosslet coinage, or as it is better known now, the Telby coinage, is one of the most interesting periods of English coinage, following in the same poorly struck condition of the coins before it. The Telby hoard of medieval silver pennies of Henry II was an important find for the study of medieval numismatics, but one of the most interesting elements of the hoard is that it was buried inside an intact Roman storage jar manufactured around 900 years earlier. The hoard was discovered at Telby, on the Lincolnshire Wold, 3 miles northeast of Market Racing, in 1807. The Stamford Mercury of 1807 described the hoard as, "A few days ago, a person ploughing in a field, George Tennyson, turned up one of the most considerable tumulus, which promises to reward a labour of thorough examination, a coarse glazed earthenware pot, which contained about 5,000 silver pennies of Henry I and Henry II of various mints, and some of them in excellent preservation." The hoard is now thought to have consisted around 6,000 coins of Henry II, deposited as a hoard in the mid-1170s. Combe describes how the coins were found at the side of a road which crossed a ploughed field, and that after the finder had given them to George Tennyson, and how they were forwarded to Sir Joseph Banks, who caused them to undergo the most minute examination. After the best specimens had been extracted for Banks's own collection, the British Museum, and several other private collectors, the majority of the coins, 5,127 according to Combe, were taken to the Tower of London and melted down. In defence of this seemingly barbaric act, it must be remembered that the nation was in the midst of the Napoleonic Wars and in something of an economic crisis, and that much silver was never going to be allowed to remain untouched. The importance of this discovery for our hobby cannot be stressed enough. The discovery led to a new class being discovered, and it helped date the coin issues more accurately. Although of poor issue, Combe describes the coin's accuracy to be impeccably accurate, with the combined weight only being 1/13 of a grain out. With the workers only having a pair of shears to clip the overweight coins to proper weight, this made a very poor issue of coin actually quite impressive, despite barely seeing 2 letters on either side. The pot is a carinated greyware storage jar, measuring 19.1 centimeters high and 18.1 centimeters across at the widest part of the rim. It is the type of plain and functional ceramic jar that might have been found in kitchens of all sizes across Roman Lincolnshire. It is particularly notable that, although surviving intact, there has been no restoration work required on it at all. The jar is a waster which becomes misshapen during firing. Despite this, it was deemed worthy of sale and probably purchased by someone as a functional but lesser quality second. Rayware jars of this type are known to have been produced in large quantities at kilns around the modern town of Market Racing, circa 3 miles southwest of Telby. It is likely that the jar was produced there in the late 2nd or 3rd century and probably did not travel far at all, considering that it was reused in the vicinity in the later 12th century. The idea that the jar not only survived in the active life during the Roman period, but also its time in the ground before discovery, and then being reused as a hoard container, to have its second time in the ground, to be discovered again, and then finally 149 years in private hands is quite incredible. It wasn't the only hoard to be found in Telby either. During January 1927, in excavations for new buildings just outside Leicester city boundary, a labourer unearthed a small hoard of pennies of the first issue of Henry II. They were contained in a courage earthenware jar of a yellow colour and unglazed, and when pieced together formed the lower part of the vessel of the well-known class of the sagging base. The coins found were 240 in number, and were all of the Telby coinage of Henry II, and were all of the same type. There were no other coins of any other ruler, English or foreign, and the coins were sent to the British Museum for examination and study. They were remarkably free of corrosion, and the brown surface dirt of many of them were easily removed with water and a brush. The condition of these coins were on the whole poor as well, with hardly a single coin being barely legible. The blanks as usual were very irregular except in the case of 4 northern mints, of which the coins were almost always circular. You can see the flan difference in the 2 coins on screen, with one being the very common square type, and the other being a better issue but more circular. I've spoken before about the prices of coins and how the condition of the coins affects the price, but hammered coins are one of the funny anomalies, where even some of the poorer issues are worth a lot more than the poorer issues of others. So let's take 2 coins that were in my collection. If you were looking at a Tudor coin that was beat up, creased and poorly struck, you may pay very little for it. But because Tudor coinage was on a whole very well produced, there are a lot of high grade examples that drives the price of the lower quality coins down. But when you're collecting or studying a coinage that are almost always worn, better examples of poor become very expensive. So the square Telby you see was part of my collection up until I sold it very recently for an upgrade, and it set me back around £55 in 2021. I thought this was a good price considering the crease, the chip and irregular flan, and this was purchased during the reboot of my collecting journey. The newest addition to my cabinet is my upgrade to the first that I purchased last month. This Telby is of the same class, Class F, easily defined by the ringlets as hair on the right side of the bust. We can see a lot more defined letters around the obverse and reverse legends, and to me, a more pleasing and better struck example. I am actually able to see the moneyer's name on the reverse, who was Raoul at the time it was minted. I can't quite see the mint, but with a bit more research I should be able to narrow them down based on the contemporary mint records of the moneyers and mints at the time, and my new example set me back just under £200. A total of 30 mints were involved in the initial recoining, with early recoining involving the mints Bedford, Bristol, Bury at St Edmunds, Canterbury, Carlisle, Chester, Colchester, Durham, Exeter, Gloucester, Hereford, Ilchester, Launceston, Leicester, Lincoln, London, Newcastle, Northampton, Norwich, Oxford, Pembroke, Salisbury, Shrewsbury, Stafford, Thetford, Wallingford, Wilton, Winchester and York. However, only 12 mints could remain active after the recoining was complete. This marked the beginning of a gradual reduction in the number of mints used to mint English coins. The poor execution of this issue led to the 1180 recoinage, where Henry II issued a short cross penny, producing a large, new and well-struck issue of the penny that would reduce the number of mints to produce English coins for the very first time, this leading to a higher level of quality control at the mint. So there we have it. I hope you've enjoyed today's video on a hoard found in Telby. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on the coinage down below and whether or not you have any of these coins in your collections. Thank you all for watching, and as always, keep collecting.